Hello everyone, JL here, and welcome to Bridge the Divide, where I scrutinize, discuss, and sometimes debate theist claims in an effort to help fill the societal chasms that religion often creates between us. Today, I'll be delivering a top 10 of arguments for why I do not accept the claim that a God exists. For sake of ease, I'll be focusing on the triune Christian God, aka the Hebrew thunder god Yahweh. And yes, I am fully aware that from a metaphysical standpoint, God cannot be proven nor disproven. And while many theists will whinge about how they can logically prove an irrational concept, or how the universe must have a creator, or how facts can only be instantiated if there is an ultimate foundation for them to be referenced from, this list addresses what we, for all intents and purposes, objectively experience here on Earth in this reality, backed by evidence confirmed through our many predictive models. Remember, it is theists that make the positive claim of a God. It's the atheist that rejects that claim. And these are just some of the reasons why. Number 1. Detectability. The definition of existence is the fact or state of living or having objective reality. In this reality, this universe we occupy, it's composed of matter, energy, and physical information. One of the ways that we determine the difference between what is real and what is imaginary is novel testable predictions based upon evidence. By this strict methodology, if a God exists, it would exist in one of these states, and it would be detectable, either directly, as in we could measure it, or indirectly, we could measure the effect of it. However, since we measure neither of these things, and there is no evidence to even imply any form of contingency, it can be reasonably and rationally posited that within this universe, God holds the same logical value as non-existence. Number 2, violation of natural law. This one's going to get a little rough, so bear with me. While the arguments for an omni-God, meaning omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and omnipresent, have kind of fallen to the wayside in recent years, there are many Christians that still claim the all-powerful nature of their God. Unfortunately, this omni-being simply cannot be. Starting with omniscience, knowing all things, this being would exist in a state of direct violation of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This violation implies a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. To explain, violating the uncertainty relations in quantum mechanics leads to a thermodynamic cycle with positive network gain. This is simply not observed anywhere in nature, as this would be an indirect detection of this being. And if God is not omniscient, it logically follows that it cannot be omnibenevolent, being unable to discern the ultimate outcomes of all of its actions. When this argument follows the Epicurean problem of evil, this being is no longer omnibenevolent. Averroes's paradox of the stone shuts down the omnipotent argument, and without the previous three, this God merely exists in a state of superposition, omnipresence, making this being no different than any subatomic particle, which, interestingly, is something we actually can detect. Number 3. Unnecessary. Wow, sorry for the physics lessons on that last one. I'll try to be a bit more succinct going forward. The third issue is how unnecessary such a being is. Virtually all processes and phenomena in the universe can be explained. Now, there are a few gaps in our knowledge, but we have top men working on them.
Who? Top men.
There is no evidence that even implies that the laws of the universe, that which describes how the universe operates, is contingent upon anything. There is no necessity for a God at any point in the current predictive model. To be fair, that could change, but I doubt it. Number 4, illogical. The notion of such a being is also painfully illogical when it comes to what we observe in the universe. The omni-God is illogical by definition. The maximal God is a post hoc rationalization in the face of the illogical omni. The observability of a potentially deterministic universe and that of free will makes any agency a God could have illogical by nature. And of course, the very nature of a being that is forced out of contention as our understanding of reality expands and deepens means the existence of such an agential creator flies in the face of logical conclusions given the evidence at hand.
It is not logical.
Number 5, irrational. So, we have rationally concluded that the concept of a God is completely irrational.
And how did you do that, my son?
Oh, shut up, God! Now, it's important for theists to remember that when we say irrational, we do not mean crazy or stupid. There are lots of theists that will take this particular word and they will twist it into an insult or an ad hom attack in order to victimize themselves for their fellow believers.
So cut off my head and make me a martyr.
In actuality, irrational simply means not logical or reasonable. We've already looked at why a God would be illogical, so it follows that it is also irrational. A particularly strange argument is that for any worldview to have any kind of coherency when it comes to propositions is because something acts as the ultimate irreducible, indispensable, non-dependent primary upon which everything is able to be instantiated.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Right. Okay, in simpler terms, we can reason, therefore God. But there is a problem there. Any facts that we rely on do actually have an ultimacy upon which they are contingent. The laws, principles, and theorems of this isolated system that we call the universe. That is the only ultimacy that we have evidence of, and we use that evidence to create predictive models. Asserting that anything is prescriptive for the laws of reality requires evidence of that prescriptive thing. There isn't any, and asserting there is irrational. For something to be rational, it implies that there is evidence to support the justification of taking the position. Therefore, a God concept is irrational. This lack of evidence also relegates any God to an axiomatic foundation, something fundamentally presupposed, which by its nature is irrational. Number 6, terrible design. For many people, the seemingly complex perfection of the human body is proof positive of God. They assert that God created we humans in His image, and that from our DNA to our variability to reason is evidence of intelligent design.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
Unfortunately, just a cursory examination of human anatomy can tell you that if the body was designed, whoever did it was an idiot. Upon closer inspection, evolution designed our bodies with the biological equivalent of throwing random shit at a wall to see what would stick.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
To quote Princeton physical anthropologist Alan Mann, evolution doesn't produce perfection, it produces function. A few examples of our inadequate design include the inappropriate curving of our spine due to bipedal walking, the hinged knee joint which is prone to severe injury, our wisdom teeth, the narrowing of the pelvis making childbirth very painful and sometimes fatal, the misrouted recurrent laryngeal nerve which often impacts the aorta, backwards retinas, the trachea and esophagus both opening into the pharynx, and, of course, our kludgy brain, an organ that evolved in stages which led to haphazard neural workarounds resulting in disjointed communications between the forebrain and the hindbrain, often resulting in hormone imbalances, depression, schizophrenia, unreliable memories, confirmation bias, and many other cognitive limitations and impairments. Number 7, the veracity of the Bible. There exist too many translation errors, contradictions, subjective interpretations, science errors, misunderstandings of natural phenomena, confirmation bias, ignorance, sacrifices to the god of ecumenical politics, and testimony of third, fourth, and even generationally distant parties in the Bible to ever consider it a worthwhile source of anything other than some basic moral stories which are depicted with greater understandability in books like Aesop's Fables. Number 8, no discernible truth. This one is actually pretty simple. Every religion on the planet has claimed that it is the correct one. Everyone has claimed that they were the truth. None have demonstrated or proven this beyond a shadow of a doubt. All subsist on faith and faith alone. And faith is the excuse given when someone lacks a good reason to believe in something. Number 9, no concrete form. Virtually every denomination has different versions of their Christianity. Some have only mild differences, like a change in how to interpret a particular book or chapter or verse, or even which version of the Bible is the best. Some have chasmically drastic differences, like trance-babbling at the ceiling, engaging in rampant pederasty, or sweaty dancing with eastern diamondback rattlesnakes. Suffice to say, there is no concrete form in any religion because the texts that they are based upon are intensely vague, unsubstantiated, unverifiable, and open to wild interpretation. They are all subjective, and if there was a true version, I think an all-knowing being would ensure that we got the right one first. Any other explanation is just a post hoc rationalization to make up for their God's mysterious laziness. And beyond that, it's all just cherry-picked to support personal interests.
We take what we want and leave the rest. Just like your salad bar.
Number 10, subjective interpretation.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Lastly, the term God itself has taken on so many different forms and attributes that the only thing we could possibly take from the historicity of God is that the concept is ancient, it explains things that ignorant, primitive humans couldn't possibly understand, and it relinquishes humans of the responsibilities of their own lives. It's so much better to shrug the burdens of your life into the hands of an imaginary being. It's simpler to leave the outcomes of your actions and inactions up to the will of this creature. It's far easier to deny the hardships of this life and this world and the pain of others by keeping your head in the clouds and letting someone else take care of it. The entirety of this is a subjective interpretation of the very being that stands at the head of a belief. And if the all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving Creator knew ahead of time that what we as a species would face and did nothing, then he is either a monster of unfathomable capacity, or he is a phantom, a figment, an imaginary friend, a scapegoat for all that leaves us terrified and desperate. Something upon which we can shackle the burdens of living, lest we be forced to deal with the burdens of living. Thank you all so much for joining me. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. On a more personal note, I wanted to take a moment to express that regardless of my presentation, what people believe has never been my concern. I'm amazed daily at the deep and complex power of the human mind. Our brain's ability to cope has developed over hundreds of thousands of years. The psychology of our species is miles deep and mostly unexplored and misunderstood. My attention has always been drawn to why people believe the things they do. If you believe in a god, gods, or other supernatural things, you are entitled to believe what you desire. It is only when those beliefs stray into the realm of dictating what others can and cannot do with their own lives that I am forced to stand up against them. I do hope that along my journey, I can express my thoughts and critiques of these belief systems well enough that others might apply a more critical view to theirs, as I did with mine. My goal is, and always will be, to accept as many true things as possible and reject as many false things as I can. As always, I'm open to any comments, questions, critiques of my videos. Hit me up in the comments, and I'm always able to get back to people in a pretty timely manner. If you really enjoy horror movies, or you just want to see me be able to create more content like this, check out my podcast, Week in Horror, a weekly show on the history of the horror genre in film. All links will be in the description. You can also check me out every Sunday on the Four Beardsmen of the Apocalypse, where we discuss religion, politics, history, or how many different ways you can wear your underwear until the overwhelming smell forces you to change them. Special thanks to fellow beardsmen Irish Demon, Johnny O, and PhD Tony for helping to inspire this video. As always, I appreciate you so much for your support of me on this journey. I honestly couldn't do it without each and every one of you. I'll see you all in the next one, and as always, be safe, be excellent to each other, and together we can bridge the divide.